The Federation had always been a grand tapestry of diversity, with species old and new working together to maintain order in the vastness of space. But Earth had been the pulse, the heartbeat. The Terrans had arrived just a few centuries ago, young yet relentless in their drive to prove themselves. They had fought, explored, and discovered, pushing the boundaries of what was known. Their minds were sharp, their technology revolutionary. Every technological leap, every diplomatic breakthrough, had been a testament to the boundless potential of humankind. But now, that brilliance had withdrawn into silence. Ambassador Rhea Collins, the human representative at the Federation Summit, had stood before the assembly, her voice calm, but firm. The words she spoke were not ones of anger or defiance, but resignation. "We leave the Federation," she had said. "Earth will no longer participate in your projects, your governance, or your war. We no longer share your vision." The room had gone cold. Some species exchanged glances, unsure whether this was a political maneuver or a statement of true intent. The Tuzari, with their long, slow-moving lives, were the first to speak. Their leader, Ambassador Stree, had suggested it was simply a matter of bureaucratic overreach. Perhaps Earth needed time to recalibrate its priorities. Others nodded, murmuring in agreement. The younger species, like the Vekari, had shrugged, convinced that humanity's youthful arrogance had finally caused them to trip. But then Collins had made her next announcement. "Effective immediately, we are withdrawing all assets. All humans from this moment forward are to remain on Earth. If you wish to speak to us, you may attempt contact. But I promise you, no one will answer unless we are ready." A chill had spread through the room. No one had expected it to be so absolute. She wasn't just withdrawing humanity's influence. She was closing the door to the Federation entirely. And she had left the summit before anyone could ask further questions. The Federation didn't act immediately. The following days were filled with uncertainty and speculation. The leadership debated, but no one could predict what this meant for the galaxy's future. The Terrans were too deeply ingrained into every system. How could they just disappear? But slowly, the truth settled in. Earth was gone. At first, the absence of Earth was almost imperceptible. The initial shock wore off, and the Federation went about its business as usual. The great galactic machine, with its thousands of interconnected systems, seemed to hum along without missing a beat. But beneath the surface, the cracks began to show. In the months following humanity's withdrawal, the first signs of strain appeared. The hyperlane network, once maintained by Earth's brilliant engineers, started experiencing disruptions. FTL travel routes that had once been smooth, reliable, and rapid became erratic. Ships frequently experienced delays or detours, causing trade to stagnate and colonies on the fringe to go dark. The Federation's crisis response teams worked tirelessly to patch the damage, but every fix seemed temporary, and no one could explain why. Then small worlds, some of the Federation's most prosperous colonies, began reporting unusual glitches in their core systems. Power grids failed for no reason. Energy extraction from stars grew erratic. Even basic life support systems in remote space stations malfunctioned in ways that defied understanding. It wasn't just equipment failing. It was everything. Everything that had once been human-made, once trusted, once reliable, now began to crumble without explanation. The Federation tried to call upon the Terran colonies for support, but the response, if there was any, came in the form of dead air. No ships from Earth had made any moves to re-engage. The once constant hum of human technological presence was now a haunting silence. As time wore on, suspicion began to mount. Some of the more paranoid species, like the Kurizi, speculated that humanity's withdrawal wasn't simply a political move, it was a strategy. Perhaps Earth had developed something so powerful, so dangerous, that it could no longer be trusted to stay within the bounds of the Federation. Some even whispered that humanity had discovered a way to transcend the very fabric of space and time itself. The Federation began to spin out of control. Old rivalries, dormant for centuries, reignited. The Tizeri and the Vekari, once allies in the fight against the Nalthar Empire, began skirmishing over control of disputed sectors of the galaxy. The Mandu, a telepathic species, reported interference in their communications, which they believed was the result of human technology left behind. The once collaborative atmosphere of the Federation turned paranoid, with each race turning inward, hoarding resources, and guarding their secrets. But it wasn't just politics. The real issue was the quiet realization that without humanity's touch, the Federation itself seemed to be losing its purpose, its drive. The one thing they had counted on, human ingenuity, was gone. And without it, the galaxy seemed vastly emptier. It wasn't long before the Federation's desperation reached its peak, with entire sectors of space starting to fall into disrepair and chaos. The leadership knew they could no longer pretend that Earth's withdrawal was a temporary blip. The Terrans had left, and in doing so, they had pulled the very threads that had once held the Federation together. The situation had become untenable. In a last-ditch effort to understand what had truly happened to Earth, the Federation authorized the launch of a daring and risky mission, the Silent Reach. A fleet of ships, equipped with the most advanced exploratory technology available, was sent to Sol, humanity's home system, to investigate. Their orders were clear: find out what Earth had done, or had become, and if possible, bring them back into the fold. They would find out the truth, no matter what it took. The journey to Sol was long, and as the fleet crossed the final light years, the tension within the mission grew palpable. In the Federation's mind, Earth was either hiding something unimaginably powerful or had collapsed into a state of utter isolation. Neither option boded well for the galaxy at large. When they finally arrived in the outer reaches of the system, what they found took their breath away. The first ship to enter the system was the Scion, a sleek exploratory vessel led by Captain Sorendal. As it crossed the threshold into Sol's domain, the crew was greeted with a sight unlike any they had imagined. The asteroid belt had been transformed. No longer just a scatter of frozen rock, it was now a finely tuned network of stations, energy collectors, and terraforming facilities. Beyond it, the gas giants of Jupiter and Saturn were surrounded by massive Dyson swarms, sleek, geometric structures that gathered energy from the stars in ways the Federation had never even considered. It was like nothing they'd seen before. Then the full scale of humanity's evolution became clear. The planets themselves had been reshaped. Mars, which had once been a barren wasteland, was now a paradise of living biospheres, pulsating with artificial life that seemed to breathe and adapt in real time. Venus, too, had undergone radical transformation. Its toxic atmosphere had been replaced by breathable air, and its surface was now a sprawling metropolis of towering spires and complex, biomechanical cities. But it was the sun itself that left them awestruck. A gargantuan series of solar panels and energy-collecting fields surrounded it, an artificial construct of unimaginable size that siphoned solar energy and redistributed it across the system in a cascade of radiant power. In the midst of all this, humanity had simply disappeared. Not in the sense of vanishing, but in the sense of stepping beyond what anyone had thought possible. The Federation fleet searched for signs of life, but found only silence. No humans appeared to be on the surface of any of the transformed planets. It was only after a thorough scan of Earth's surface that they discovered a chilling truth. Hidden beneath layers of advanced shielding, Earth had become something more than just a home for humanity. It was a center of knowledge and creation, filled with vast computational archives and genetic research hubs. The entire planet had been turned into a giant mind, a collective intelligence greater than anything the Federation had encountered. As the mission's leader, Captain Dell, sent his findings back to the Federation, a single cryptic message was relayed. "We are no longer what you knew. We are something else now. Come when you have the courage to ask." And with that, the fleet turned back, unsure whether to feel awe, fear, or confusion. The Federation was shaken to its core. What the Silent Reach had discovered on Earth was beyond comprehension. Humanity had changed. It was no longer just a young, brilliant species among many. It had transcended into something new, something that defied the very principles the Federation had been built on. And with that change came a deep, creeping fear. The revelation that Earth had re-engineered its entire solar system, its planets, and its very nature was met with a mix of awe and dread. Some believed the Terrans had unlocked forbidden knowledge, advanced technologies that could manipulate the very fabric of space-time. Others whispered darker thoughts, that humanity was now so far beyond the Federation's reach that it was impossible to predict what they might do next. The Federation was built on cooperation, on the idea that no species was superior to the others. But now, the Terrans had stepped into a realm where that belief no longer held. Conversations turned to political action. The old guard of the Federation, the ancient species who had dominated the galaxy for millennia, began to grow anxious. The Krell, with their vast telekinetic powers, feared that Earth's advancements would soon outstrip even their ability to control the galaxy. The Shar, an insectoid species, worried that humanity might have unlocked the secrets of biological immortality, an achievement that could potentially unbalance the power dynamics forever. A council meeting was convened, and while the Tizeri and Vekari diplomats proposed calm and reasoned negotiation, others, like the brutal Kylan warlords, began to speak in whispers of confrontation. There were factions within the Federation that considered Earth's silence a threat. They feared that humanity's withdrawal wasn't just a statement, it was a declaration of independence. And worse, a warning. But no one could agree on what that warning meant. A faction of young Federation representatives, led by the ambitious Ilani Rook, proposed a drastic course of action. They would send an expedition to Earth, not just to communicate, but to force humanity's hand. They would demand that Earth's doors be opened to the Federation again, to bring them back into the fold, where they could be contained and controlled, or at the very least, understood. This idea was met with stark opposition. Some, like the Ceteri Council, believed any such aggression would provoke an irreversible conflict. Others feared that humanity, with its new power, might not even bother to retaliate. It was more likely they would simply disappear again, or worse, reshape the very foundation of the Federation into something else entirely. But one fact was certain: the Federation was no longer united. It had fractured. Fear had become the guiding force, and with it came the very real possibility of civil war. The once unspoken bond between species had now splintered into mistrust and ambition. Humanity's absence had created a power vacuum, and the cosmos, once filled with the harmony of countless worlds working together, now seemed more like a powder keg waiting for the match. And Earth, its great transformation, stood at the heart of it all, silent, still, watching. It wasn't long before the Federation's divided factions took action. The conflict over what to do about Earth reached a boiling point. Diplomatic negotiations failed. The cautious voices within the Federation were drowned out by the growing chorus of those who wanted a solution, any solution, to reassert control. Earth had become an enigma, and with every passing day, the mystery grew more terrifying. Then, as if to mock their frantic searches, the answer arrived. But not in the way anyone had anticipated. It came in the form of an unmarked human vessel, the Zenith. It appeared in Federation space without warning, emerging from the outer reaches of the Helix Nebula. No one had seen it coming. It wasn't a warship, nor a diplomatic envoy. It wasn't even a message from Earth itself. It was just there. The ship's design was unfamiliar to Federation sensors, streamlined and almost organic in its appearance, as if it were a living thing itself. It didn't broadcast a greeting or demand. It simply hovered in orbit around Verex, a planet recently ravaged by pirate raids and now in desperate need of repairs. The Federation scrambled to respond, sending representatives and fleet ships to intercept the unknown vessel, but when they arrived, they found something unexpected. The Zenith wasn't there to engage in a battle, nor was it there to threaten or provoke. Instead, it released a swarm of small, delicate drones, hundreds of them, that descended upon the planet. Each drone, perfectly calibrated, began performing a series of intricate repairs, restoring broken communication arrays, mending damaged power plants, and even reinforcing the planet's failing infrastructure. Within hours, the once blighted world began to shine with new life. Power surged back into homes and factories. Trade routes reopened. The pirates that had once terrorized the region now found themselves powerless against the sudden tide of technological restoration. The Federation was stunned into silence. They had sent a fleet to confront an enemy, but instead they were witnessing a transformation, a peaceful, almost effortless reclamation of a world in desperate need. The drones did not speak, did not interact with the local inhabitants. They worked with an eerie precision, like a vast, silent collective intelligence that understood the problems and fixed them without question. When the operation was completed, the Zenith transmitted a brief message, a single line that sent ripples through the Federation's communications network. "We have repaired. Your people can thrive again. But we are not here to solve your problems. Only you can do that." Before any response could be formulated, the Zenith turned and disappeared into the void, vanishing without a trace, leaving the Federation stunned, confused, and unsure of what had just occurred. Was this humanity's way of saying, "We are watching"? Or was it a silent declaration that the universe no longer required Federation intervention? The question remained unanswered. The Federation was left reeling. The Zenith's sudden, inexplicable intervention on Virex was a wake-up call, but it raised more questions than answers. It was clear now that humanity wasn't simply retreating into isolation. They had evolved into something that no one in the Federation could begin to comprehend. The drones, the technology, the efficiency, all of it hinted at something far beyond what any species, even the oldest and most advanced, had ever imagined. The silence from Earth continued. No direct communication came from the homeworld. The Federation, in its desperation, sent more probes, more expeditions, but every attempt to contact Earth or any of its colonies was met with silence. It was as if humanity had decided that no one was worthy of their attention. The fear spread. Whispers in the Federation's halls turned into urgent conversations between the high-ranking officials. What was humanity becoming? And how much longer before they would turn their gaze from fixing the broken to shaping the universe according to their own vision? And then came the whispers of something darker. A faction within the Federation's inner circle began to fear that humanity wasn't just indifferent to their old allies. They were actively preparing for something. But what? Some believed humanity was developing technologies that could manipulate reality itself, even breach the very fabric of space and time. Others feared that Earth was on the brink of developing some sort of weapon, a force so powerful that it could reshape galaxies, could bend entire star systems to their will. The Quiet Watchers, a secretive group formed by the Federation's most paranoid and influential leaders, reported strange occurrences in space, anomalies that seemed to follow human-made technology, but always just out of reach. Ships, systems, and even entire fleets experienced glitches, abnormal fluctuations in spacetime that couldn't be explained by known laws of physics. The Federation could no longer ignore it. The reality warping rumors grew too loud to dismiss. Humanity's actions weren't just a statement of power, they were a signal, perhaps even a warning. We are beyond your reach. You may think you control the cosmos, but we are already shaping it in ways you cannot begin to understand. But despite the growing paranoia, there was no action from Earth. They did not attack. They did not make demands. They simply watched. Their absence in the Federation's affairs, the silence of their communications, was an absence that felt final. It felt like humanity had outgrown their place in the universe, and perhaps outgrown the Federation itself. The fear grew like a shadow over every corner of the galaxy. The once hopeful promise of peaceful cooperation in the Federation now seemed like a dream. And as each day passed, It became clearer. The galaxy was no longer just a place of peaceful coexistence. It had become a stage for something far greater and far more unpredictable. The galaxy, once a place of tenuous unity, was slipping into an era of uncertainty and unease. The Federation's once proud council, now fractured by fear and suspicion, could no longer deny that the Terrans had transcended something fundamental. The silence from Earth had become a specter haunting every decision, every strategy. It wasn't just their absence, it was their power, which was now seen as a threat to the very fabric of intergalactic order. Tensions escalated quickly. The Mandu, the telepathic species, began to experience interference, flashes of foreign thoughts, impressions that didn't belong to their own minds. The interference was subtle, at first, a fleeting whisper at the edge of their consciousness, but it grew stronger with each passing day. Some of their strongest telepaths began to panic, claiming that the voices they heard were not random. They were intentional. Human voices, distant and yet impossibly close, were sending out waves of influence they couldn't contain. In the central sector of Federation space, the Vakari, long known for their aggressive territorial expansions, began consolidating their forces, convinced that the humans had developed a power that could bend minds. The Krell, with their telekinetic abilities, were equally uneasy, sensing an unknown disturbance in the electromagnetic fields that could only be the product of technology beyond their comprehension. A violent shift occurred when the Thailand warlords, a ruthless and war-hungry species, declared open war on the Federation. They had long held grudges against several Federation members and saw this moment as an opportunity to strike. Their forces, emboldened by the Federation's fracturing, began launching coordinated raids on neutral systems, testing the Federation's weakened resolve. And yet, as this chaos unfolded, Earth remained silent. Not a single fleet from their transformed solar system moved to intervene. Not a single message was received. Humanity, it seemed, had deliberately detached itself from the galaxy's conflicts. The Federation, desperate to maintain control, began to fracture into two distinct factions, one that believed humanity must be brought back into the fold at any cost, and another that argued humanity's silence was a declaration that they should be left alone, isolated. The former wanted to negotiate, or even coerce, humanity back into the Federation's fold. The latter saw the Terrans as too dangerous, too powerful to ever be trusted again, and advocated for a policy of containment. In the midst of this tension, a shocking discovery came from the edges of Federation space. A group of explorers on a routine mission to a long-abandoned colony stumbled upon something they could not have expected: a rift in space itself. It wasn't just a cosmic anomaly. It was a tear, a doorway into something other. The very fabric of space seemed to bend and pulse with an energy that felt alive. And standing at its threshold, they saw something. Human-shaped figures, but not human. There were no words, only a sense of profound recognition. The rift pulsed again, and a single thought echoed through the minds of those present. "We are coming. Prepare yourselves." The rift, once thought to be a simple cosmic anomaly, now stood as the focal point of the Federation's greatest fears and hopes. The explorers who first witnessed the other, those figures, human-shaped but undeniably alien, reported that the rift seemed to pulse with a kind of energy that was alive, conscious, as though it were beckoning. But to what? And for whom? Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The Federation, already at the edge of civil war over humanity's mysterious withdrawal, now faced something far more profound. Earth was no longer simply silent. It was changing. The rift wasn't just a crack in space-time. It was a signal, a doorway. It was a message from beyond the Federation's understanding, a call that humanity was no longer confined by the boundaries of the galaxy or even the universe itself. As the Federation's council convened for what would be their most crucial meeting yet, the question loomed. Should they try to close the rift? Should they seek to understand what lay beyond it? Or should they prepare for something more dangerous than they had ever imagined? The factions within the council were divided more than ever. Some, like the Krell, saw the rift as a sign of humanity's ultimate ascension, a kind of evolution into a higher state of being. They wanted to explore it, to learn from it. Others, like the Xylon, saw the rift as a threat, a potential weapon that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy irreversibly. They advocated for a military strike to destroy it before humanity's transformation could escalate. The Federation's indecision lasted for weeks. And then, without warning, humanity made its move. It began with a single ship, a sleek, organic craft, unlike any Federation technology, appeared at the edge of the rift. This ship was no mere scout vessel. It was a living organism, its surface shifting like flowing liquid, its structure pulsating with energy. And from it, a message was transmitted, one so simple and direct that it stopped the Federation dead in its tracks. "We are ready. Join us, or stand aside." The rift flared with an intense, brilliant light, and the human-shaped figures within it began to step forward, their presence filling the minds of those who watched. Their bodies were not made of flesh or bone, but of light and energy, constantly shifting, evolving, and merging into something new. They were human, but not human. The Federation's leaders realized with a sudden, terrifying clarity that humanity had not left the galaxy behind. They had transcended it. What they had become was a form of existence that surpassed the very laws of nature, a species that had outgrown the physical limitations of space, time, and even thought. And then, the message came again, this time filling every corner of the galaxy, carried on the energy waves of the rift itself. "We are not here to rule. We are here to evolve. Will you join us in this new beginning? Or will you resist?" The decision had come. The Federation had to choose. To embrace humanity's ascension and join them in the unknown, or to resist and risk being left behind in the wake of something they could never understand. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy was truly divided.